Welcome everybody. This is going to be just a quick video sort of explaining my interaction system for Godot. It goes by the name FPS engine, and you can purchase it with the link down below. This is an engine I've been kind of working on inside of Godot for I guess the past year-ish, maybe, yeah, probably about a year, maybe less than that. Basically, it's a project that I wanted to have to sort of like have a foundation for all of the games that I make in the future. I like doing FPS games. By FPS, I don't mean first-person shooter exactly, but I just mean like first-person. But that's how I'm kind of marketing it as, just as like the FPS engine, right? And so, yeah, so today I'm just going to be showing you guys the basics of the engine. I'm going to show you what all the basic interactions do. Basically, yeah, let's get started. I'm just going to create a new scene. I'm not going to just like start it because I want to explain more things. Let's create a new scene. Let's call it like test level. So yeah, now we have a new scene. You can do what you want here. I'm going to add like a environment, and then actually let me just do this. I'll just add like a environment from my previous scene, and then let's do a CSG because we need a floor for our player. Let's do like 10, and then what we can do is just do, we can add scene, and let's do a player. Let's add that. So yeah, this is the player. This is the FPS player that will be in the project. We press play on the scene. We'll fall through the floor, so we have to add some collision to that CSG box. And then, cool, now we have a controller, and we can move around with our mouse. We can pause. We can do whatever we want. So yeah, we have a very basic setup, and this will lead into our interactions, right? First off, this player, there's a few settings, and you'll see a few other components here. It looks complicated, but it's not that complicated once you've kind of learned the interaction system. So basically, there's just the systems component, and within the systems component, there's like a controller, just some configurations for jumping, moving, and then you have like the player inputs, which I'll get into probably in another video. This basically just triggers interactions on basic key inputs. And then the thing that kind of like triggers the interactions is this interaction area. And you can make this bigger or longer, whatever you want, to make the interactions, I guess, easier to trigger, or, you know, whatever your game needs, right? So yeah, let's get started. So I'm just going to add like, here's like a child scene, and then I already have a scene built for, for press interactions and some basic interactions. So let me actually add a little light, directional light here. So we do that. And then I'll just show you right away. So this is a press interaction. If we go up to it, it'll like sort of highlight to know that we can press it. I can press either F or click, and what will happen is a debug message will pop up for each of those. For now, my key mapper, we can look, the interactions either F or left mouse button. And this key mapper comes with the engine, so it's already built in. You don't need to configure any of that, and it saves and everything. But yeah, there's like this basic component, and then yeah, so we just click, it'll toggle it. And so yeah, that's the press interaction. Now let's dig into the interaction a little bit. If we go into the scene, then so yeah, here's the interaction. A basic interaction, right? We need a few things. If we want to have the player be able to trigger it or interact with it, we need this interaction sort of main node. And let me just build it out. So I'll just kill this, and then let's create a static body 3D. Let's create a collider. Let's give it a box. And we can move this. Let's add like a CSG container as well. And make sure not to add collision on this. It's cool. Now we have something that we can kind of run into. Now, from this, we can name this whatever, test interaction. We can add by the way, I'm doing add child node, and then I can add the interaction node. This interaction node, so that's kind of what you need to start beginning defining your interaction, right? We can define an ID here, and I'll tell you what this is maybe later on. But basically, what you can do with the IDs, and you can trigger things remotely, and I'll show you that in a little bit. You can add a mesh to outline. If you want to outline your material or your box, you can check that or add the whatever thing that has the material on it. Right. Let's set our interaction layers. This allows us to actually interact with the object with our interaction collider on the player. And then you'll see a couple buttons here. They look like toggles, but they're buttons. So if we click the setup all, it'll set up our interaction structure. And some of you may not need all these components for all your interactions. So if we delete these and then we come back here, we can set them up individually for actually what we need, right? And basically, so let me go over these. So the inputs is basically how do we trigger our interaction? What keys need to be pressed? What sort of like behaviors does the player need to do to trigger it? So let's say we add like a key, or actually I'll just type in inputs and I'll show you the different inputs. So we have area, key press, hold key, and then a look at interaction. So the area is like if the player is within the area, you can define an area 3D, then you can do it here, then it'll trigger the interaction, right? But for now we're just going to do the press interaction. This defines what key do we need to press to interact with the interaction. So let's jump in. Let's see if it does anything. You'll notice it doesn't do anything yet. It is triggering it, but there's no logic or any debug or anything that we're actually doing. So we're going to remove the condition and the failed logics. Let's add a logic. We'll start really simple. We'll just do let's do a debug message, and then we'll say hello world. Then we can print the interaction ID as well. Yeah, it looks like the interaction ID doesn't get printed, but I need to add that later, I think. Basically, we're clicking, and it's showing up in our Godot console as well as the in-game console. And you can activate that with this key. It's under the escape key. I forget what it's called though. But yeah, so that's working. It's triggering our logics. What's great is you can add as many logics as you want. So you can do this and add random stuff, and then it'll basically do a bunch of different messages, right? Because it triggers all of these. So all right, and then we can add something else, like let's shake the player camera whenever we do that. Actually, in this case, we need a remote trigger because let's do that. I'll show you. So if we need a trigger by an interaction by an ID. So this is what I mean before, where we need an ID so we can trigger things remotely. Let's add, let's go to the player. You'll see we have a camera shake interaction actually. So let's copy this ID. Let's place it here. So now if we jump back in, it will shake the player camera whenever we click it, right? I think the shake's a little buggy, but yeah, for the most part it works, right? It's doing what we need and it's triggering it remotely. We don't need to reference any interaction. We just call the string ID, and that's it. You can make all your custom remote components. You can make crazy systems with this. But the whole point is just to be very flexible and not too confined within like just having an interaction and need to reference it. There's also a reference. You can do it by reference too. If we want to add like this interaction, then we can trigger that interaction just by referencing it. This one's a little more strict just because you need to have the reference in your tree. But for things like in other components or scenes, you could just do remote. And all this interaction, this camera shake, so there's an interaction logic and then a camera shake logic. So it takes a camera shake intensity and duration. And then we define the interaction ID here. Here's a little description. But you can tell it's super simple because we don't need to add any conditions or inputs. It's just basically for remote calls when we need to actually do that. So this is great. You can add like a little note for all your remote interactions when you need to trigger certain things, but it's a very fast way to just trigger different things from all around your scene, right? So yeah, those are the remote connections, the inputs. I'll go over some other basic stuff like, so there's a thing called a player input. Basically what this is doing is when the player just presses a key, not even when the interaction is in view, right? We need to do stuff when they're out of view or if they're not even in the scene. Like, for example, pausing is an interaction on its own. You can see it pulls up a menu, and you can do different things. And then if you press escape again, it untoggles. So the way I'm doing this is just we have a player pause input component, and I can just, so if we instantiate a scene and we say player input, there's a template. And what this template allows us to do is we can hit edit, and then let's just make local. And then we can define different conditions to run our input. And you can see here, all we really need for the pause is to be able to input it, and we don't need a release actually, we can remove that. We have different logics, like we set the visibility of the settings, we make sure to pause the scene, and then we set the mouse mode of the computer, right? Because we want the mouse to be visible. So there's all these different components. You start attaching them together and you realize you don't really have to code that much anymore. You can kind of just plug and play your different logics, right? And that's sort of the power behind the system. And then we have an interaction ID called pause. And in the game, I actually built a is the wrong scene, sorry. But in the engine, I actually built a trigger ID command. So we can trigger like pause, or one second, let me, oh, this is the wrong command. I think it's, trigger ID. Yeah, well, if we type press, okay, for some reason it's not working. I don't know why. But there is like a trigger, basically command I added. That might not be added in yet. I'm not fully sure, but it is sort of supposed to be in there. But that'll be in there if you check it out. But yeah, so that's sort of the basics. And like, yeah, let me look more into the pause. So it's basically just interaction with a logic as a child, and then it runs all these logic nodes. And so you can plug and play and call this remotely and kind of do what you need to do, right? But yeah, that's the very basics. There's a lot of different core components, and it's good to learn those, and then you can branch out and expand your system. I guess the idea of this overall is just so you can use these systems in other games, and you can transfer them to because like you build the infrastructure of your game, and then you want to use different parts in other games that you make too, right? So you can kind of like build a core network of all these different logic components so that you can use it and pass it on to different games and not have to spend so much time rebuilding systems that you've made, right? But yeah, that's sort of the idea. Sorry if this video is a little all over the place. I don't really like to plan videos very much, so I don't know. Sometimes it can be a little disorganized, but yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. Make sure to check it out. Again, the link in the description for the engine. I made it about $25. I've been working on this engine for a while, so I feel like having it priced at something, right, is important for me. Just because I put a lot of effort into the engine and actually working out different bugs, and I've rebuilt it probably about 3 times. So this is the best, I guess, most simplified solution I came up with. I'm sure later down the line I might rebuild it again, but yeah, let me know what you guys think. On the itch page, there's like a bug report and feature request form, so make sure to check those out too if you have any issues with the engine. But yeah, just let me know what you guys think about it. All right, appreciate it. Peace.